All right. Welcome, everyone, to this week's Franchise Partner Spotlight webinar. Appreciate everyone taking some time to join us this afternoon. If anyone's listening in and this is the first of these webinars that you're listening to, the purpose of these Spotlight webinars are to give anyone that's interested in learning more about ShelfGenie and our franchise opportunities a chance to hear from some of our different franchise partners. So each week we have a different franchise partner come on and just kind of tell their story, how they got started with ShelfGenie, and share some of their experiences. And it's a really good opportunity to ask some questions and just learn from some of our different franchise partners. So appreciate everyone taking some time to join us. That's a perfect cue for a little bit of housekeeping I always do at the beginning of these calls. I'm going to mute everyone on the line, but we will open it up periodically for Q&A as we go. There's also a chat box, so that's an easy way to submit questions as well. We'll be keeping an eye on the chat box as we go today. So with that, it's my pleasure to introduce Michael Grothe, who's our franchise partner joining us today. Michael is our owner in Sarasota, Tampa, and Orlando. So he's been a franchise partner with ShelfGenie since early 2011. And then he bought the Orlando market, I guess, a little over 3 years ago. Is that right, Michael?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So Michael's been in the organization for quite some time. He's been steadily growing his business over the years. Also been very involved in a number of ways. He's an FAC member. FAC stands for Franchise Advisory Council. So he was elected onto the FAC in 2018 and currently serves on that committee, also on our 5-star committee. And he was recently awarded the Franchisee of the Year award at our conference in June earlier this year, which is a pretty big accomplishment. So congratulations on that, Michael, and really appreciate you taking some time to join us today. So with that, I'd like to just hand it over to you and maybe give everyone just a quick introduction and maybe share a little bit of what you did prior to ShelfGenie and how getting into business for yourself with ShelfGenie materialized.
Yeah, sure. So I came from the banking and finance world. From the north, moved to Florida. Went from large corporate manufacturers to banking real estate developers, and you can imagine the fun that started around 2008. And the real estate market in Florida was hit hard, so I was pretty miserable. Decided I needed to own my own business, and looked at a number of businesses and decided on franchising because, hopefully they've already made the mistakes, and maybe I won't have to suffer the mistakes, and hopefully a proven system and support, as opposed to going out and starting a business from scratch.
Yep.
So I looked around, found ShelfGenie, loved the business model. It's highly a variable cost model, so there's no storefront, a lot of overhead. Love that. Love the kind of culture on focusing on the client. Love the product and the fact that while Florida has a real aging population based on the retirees, the U.S. population is aging as people live longer, and that just fits in right into the key demographic, which at least for me is 55 years and older, and probably is for most folks as well.
Yeah.
And then the fact that it's a business I can run if I want to go on vacation, as long as I have an internet connection, we can run it and not skip a beat. As Wes mentioned. So we started out, I don't know how y'all's geography of Florida is, but with a small part of the west coast of Florida, Sarasota, Manatee, part of Tampa, part of St. Pete area, and have slowly grew that. So we now, on the west coast, we've got 10 territories, because you've converted over now. And then in the Orlando market, which I picked up in 2016, we have 6, and been able to scale the business. And we lived in Florida till 13, and then moved to Nashville, Tennessee, in middle of 13, and I've got a great team in place. Love the ShelfGenie technology. So again, it makes it real easy to run the business from wherever you are. But it took us a long time to get to where we are today.
Yeah, sure. It didn't happen overnight, but it is an interesting, dynamic that you have because you live, well outside of the territories that you own and operate. And I think it is a testament to the systems that we have in place, and, the technology certainly, makes it more feasible for you to be able to stay on top of the business and oversee everything even from afar. And, to your point, even if you're not in Nashville, if you're on vacation or wherever you are, as long as you have an internet connection, you're able to stay plugged in and stay on top of it. The key to that obviously is having a good team in place. And, you kind of mentioned the amount of territory that you have. I believe in terms of number of territories, you are the largest franchise partner, based on the number of territories that you have. So, maybe take us through a little bit of the evolution that you've seen over the last, 8 years or so in business, starting out with a smaller chunk of territory and then, growing it to what you've done today. What does that kind of look like, and what are some of the key things that you've learned along the way?
I think I've learned to stay, to stay kind of follow the system, and to have a pretty consistent approach to marketing. We kind of grew slowly. We bought our initial group of territories, digested that, bought another, digested that, bought another, digested that, expanded with Orlando, digested that, and then bought another. So we kind of been on an every 2 years, picking up a more ShelfGenie territory. It's kind of been the evolution of the business, and frankly, we'll have another discussion next year, Wes, about maybe some more, because
I was going to say at that pattern you're due, and I can put you in touch with someone that might be able to sell you another territory or two.
Anyways, let's see. You mentioned, and I'm kind of going off track here because I don't remember exactly what you said, but
that's all right.
You mentioned the evolution, and having a great team in place is key to anyone's success, and particularly if you're not there, because I can't just go out in the field and start installing stuff. But I've been pretty good at keeping a long-term team together, and if it's someone worth keeping, make them happy. I've got a kind of a small team for the number of for my dollar revenue, but also for the territory size. But of the 5 installers I've got, they're at 9 years, 2 are at 8 years, 3 years, and the others at 6 months. So it's if you find the right people, it's definitely a business that you can keep those folks happy, keep them on board, and make your life easy and help you grow the business.
Yeah. What do you have in terms of designers? So you said 5 installers?
Yeah, and I've got 5 installers. 5 designers as well. Most of them want to stay as busy as I can, and they're strategically located.
Yep.
Everybody runs about an hour. Some will do a little bit more than that. Their weekly appointment counts range anywhere on average from 2 to 10, depending on what they want, and we just make it really flexible, to meet their needs.
Yeah. Well, I think it's, and I could be wrong, but I would think that, you living outside of your markets would, in some ways at least, really help you in terms of developing the team, because you have to do it out of necessity. You can't just say, all right, well, I'll step in and do it myself.
Yeah.
And that's
a great point.
Yeah.
Because, I was kind of raised, if you can't do it right, I'll just do it myself.
Right.
And when I lived there, sometimes that would be the approach that I would take.
Yep.
when I moved out, you know, I sort of guess I dabbled in that for a little bit because I was making every other week trips to Florida. But you know, it's really, if I still lived in Florida, I would have never been able to scale the business because I would not have been able to step back and trust the people that work for me, that, you know, they can do the job and that they're doing the right thing most of the time, which they are. You know, most people want to do the right thing, but yeah, it forced a great deal of trust.
Yeah, because it's, you know, it's hard. It's hard to kind of let go sometimes and give up the control. So when you're there, it can be very easy to step in and to intervene. And I mean, I think that's something that many of our franchise partners, you know, struggle with when they're looking to build out their team. And, you know, obviously that's key to scaling any business, is having a solid team in place that you can delegate to. So yeah, I would think that almost out of necessity, you've had to really do more delegating, and that's probably served you well in some instances, at least.
Yes.
So and this is something, is, you know, the folks on the call right now, they've been working with me for a while, and they probably get sick of hearing me talk about the importance of developing a team. But it's a question that everyone has, you know, as they work through this process. You know, how do you go about finding good designers and good installers? And, you know, different owners have had different approaches that work, and obviously some have had approaches that don't work as well as others. You know, what are some of the best practices that you've picked up on over the years when it comes to, you know, finding good potential designers and installers, getting them onboarded, and then to your point from earlier, keeping them on your team, keeping them happy and keeping them motivated?
Yeah, and I'm far from the best person as far as recruiting goes. And I forget, darn, lost my train of thought. You know, I think what a lot of franchisees trap that they fall into, and you know, hopefully, Wes, you didn't do this when you started up in Wilmington, but I did, and I know other people who do it, is we're recruiting out there. You know, they're commission-based positions, so that scares a lot of people.
Yeah.
So I had fallen into the trap of trying to sell the company to the candidate versus letting the candidate sell themselves.
Right.
And taking whoever I could get, which then you end up having some revolving doors.
Yeah.
But you know, really gotten a lot stricter. You know, make sure they know about the company, that they have a good belief system, that they're not afraid to be in front of a you know, a client and make recommendations, that they're not afraid to be the high priced alternative.
Yep.
And that they really buy into the whole customer focused. You know, and I tell my team, whether a designer or an installer, we're not selling pull out shelves. That's not the business we're in. We're in the custom organization and access business, and we provide an outstanding client experience from hopefully the moment they pick up the phone to book the appointment through the time that the designer does their follow-up call after the install to make sure they're happy and everything went as planned. And that all comes as a cost. And yeah, by the way, we're going to use pull-out drawers to accomplish the overcoming access issues and overcoming organizational and overcoming space issues. And if you know, if somebody can't buy into that, they're just not a good fit. And if, you know, people who really want to be out there helping people as opposed to just sell, because we're a very soft sale organization, generally speaking. I mean, some people are better helping people get over the fence, but you know, we just don't arm twist.
Yeah, it's much more of a consultative sales process where it's, you know, helping the client solve the problems that they have, and every client has different problems. So you've got to tailor, you know, the approach and the design to that particular client and their particular situation. And that's something that designers do the best. But I mean, that's a really good point that you bring up. And, you know, we fell into that trap a little bit, I think, you know, maybe not as much as some, because, we had the benefit of having a lot of franchise owners come before us, and we were able to, listen to the advice that was available to us and learn from people that have been doing it for longer than we have. But I know from talking to other franchise owners that, they're almost, like you said, selling the company and selling the position versus, having the candidate really prove to them, why they would be a good addition to the team and why they would be an asset. So I think that's very important. Yeah, it's commission only, and that can be a little bit scary, but as long as you're, I think, framing the opportunity the right way and helping them see the potential, then it's just like you're interviewing anyone, right? Even if you're going to have them on a 6-figure salary, you're interviewing them to see, if they're going to be a good fit for your team and how they're going to be an asset. So
yeah, I mean, any good salesperson isn't afraid of commission. That's how they want to get paid, because they're good at it. They're good at what they do. They're good at presenting the product of the company. Whatever it is they're selling, they're good at it. So those folks who aren't afraid of that are.
Yeah, and they're going to realize that they can make a lot more with a commission only structure. There's a lot more upside than if they had the guarantee. So I think that is a good filter to run, prospective designers and even installers through, because to your point, if they don't buy into not only the pay structure, but, the approach that we take to sales, the focus on providing a great client experience first and foremost, they're not going to be a good fit in the long run. So it's better to figure that out sooner than later, and then no one's wasting time or spinning their wheels.
Yeah. And Kevin asked a question about how I've found people.
Yeah.
So kind of yes to all of that. I've found people from LinkedIn. I've found people from Craigslist. I've found them from mass emails to prior customers.
Yeah.
Occasionally a referral from somebody on the team, although, salespeople, let's face it, they get a little territorial. So,
Yeah.
while I offer I think a pretty good, quote unquote bounty for new team members, that's not been overly successful. And that is that's not something I've yet to figure out a really good platform for finding the people that I need. Unfortunately, y'all can look at the unemployment rate nationally and where it's been over the past couple years. We're basically at full employment, and unfortunately, in Florida, the employment rate tends to be the unemployment rate tends to be lower than the national rate. So, I've been challenged, I'll just be honest about that. But you just have to keep at it.
Yeah, I think it's, and so the question that Kevin asked, and it's a great question, Kevin, so thanks for it, was, have you found designers through your personal network, referrals from clients, websites like ZipRecruiter, LinkedIn, Indeed? And so Michael said, a little bit of all of that. And, I think the key is you're always on the lookout, for good talent. And there's not going to be a silver bullet for it. I mean, there's not going to be one, thing where you're going to probably find all of your designers or installers for that matter. But I think the key is always be looking to add talent to your team. And that's a pitfall that I've seen some of our franchise owners fall into, honestly, is they'll get 3 or 4 designers on their team that, they do pretty well and they don't complain a lot. They're pretty easy to manage. Yeah, I mean, we all have. It's an easy pitfall to fall into. And then you end up with complacency, right? And I think if you're constantly on the lookout, it doesn't mean you're adding another designer every single month, but if you're always looking and kind of putting some feelers out there through different channels, over time, you'll add more talent to the team. And then you've got a little bit of a competitive atmosphere, and then the cream rises to the top.
Well, you do. That's interesting you say that, because I brought on a new girl for Orlando, and she didn't make it through training. So we just, cut bait rather than keep fishing. And but everybody from Orlando called me and they wanted to know about this new person because they see their name pop up.
Yeah.
Emails, and it's just like, just worry about yourself and Yeah, so it does get the competitive juices flowing, and if yeah,
Well, it
they're
does because, like you said, good salespeople are going to be a bit territorial. And, if you're putting marketing dollars and resources behind driving leads and appointments, it's in your best interest as an owner to award those opportunities to your top performing designers. And, the more you have, the more competition there is for those opportunities. And then, the flip side of that is, as a commission only salesperson, a good designer should be out there looking for their own opportunities to go and sell. They can, to an extent, create opportunities for themselves, and that should really
yes,
be an expectation that's being set.
yep.
So, what about on the installer side? Have you found any kind of particular avenues or areas that seem better than others when it comes to finding good installers?
My my extent of finding installers has been Craigslist,
Okay.
and I know some people use Thumbtack. I don't know if the folks on the call are familiar with Thumbtack, but that's basically you going out and looking to someone to do work for you. But I know people, put out notices that, hey, I'm looking for someone to work for me and do this. And if somebody responds to you to that, they're paying to respond. So
Yep.
there's been some good success with that. But fortunately, for me, when I've got a 9, an 8, an 8, and I said 3. He's been 3 years with me, but he worked for the prior franchise owner for 2 years before that. A 5-year. I just haven't had a lot of turnover,
Yeah.
which is fortunate. But you'll find the ones that are good are your skilled cabinet installers, um, um, cabinet makers. Somebody. I've got a guy who used to make furniture. Like he's really really good, but he just doesn't want to be commissioned to do that anymore. This is a little easier than doing that. It's an easier model for him. He doesn't have to go out and sell himself. So those people with good skills and customer service skills, anybody thinks this is super easy to install. And most you'll find if you're interviewing an installer, probably most of them don't think they need to come to Atlanta to training.
Yeah.
But they do, and they get that after they've been there. So
Well, and they'll realize that their life's much easier after coming, because the installation side may not be overly complex, but the key to an easy installation is getting your measurements right and getting everything built correctly. If
yeah, and
that's not done right,
it's not like buying Revit-Shelf, crap off the shelf at Home Depot that comes in 3-inch sizes. So I mean, you can't make a mistake.
that's right. Yeah. Well, and I think it is great. You'll see a lot, kind of like you have with installers, where you'll have some very tenured people, and I think a lot of it's because it is a really good gig, especially for someone that has been involved in the skilled trades in some form or fashion. And a lot of these guys that are really good with their hands and can provide the good customer service, where they may lack a little bit is on the sales and marketing side. So if they've had their own business of some sorts, that's probably been their biggest struggle, is getting new clients. And so an installer with ShelfGenie, is really going to like the fact that by the time a job gets to them, it's already been sold, right? So they know they're getting paid for any time that they're putting into it. They don't have to go out and sell it. They just get to kind of focus on what most likely they really enjoy doing, and don't have to do the part that they don't enjoy as much.
Yeah, I had one tell me one time. He said, I told my wife, this is great. He said, I don't have to bid it and lose. I don't have to go buy product. I don't have to cut it. I don't have to worry about getting paid at the end of the job. I do what I'm supposed to do, and everything works out fine.
Yeah.
I get it assembled. It's already cut to fit. I mean, yeah, they have to do some cutting from time to time.
Yeah.
And they're always going to get paid.
That's right. It's a good gig. I've got a guy that's a firefighter, and he'll make as much with me doing installs, if not more, than, you know, he makes on a firefighter salary, you know, doing it part-time on his days off from the fire station.
Yeah, that's
So,
good.
but yeah, there's a lot of different approaches that you'll find, you know, so what's worked for Michael is not necessarily, you know, from a recruiting standpoint, what's worked, you know, well for another franchise owner. And you know, I'll kind of bring that back to the fact that there's no silver bullet. And to Michael's point earlier, it's a challenge, right? Even in a, you know, down economy where unemployment may be a little bit higher, it's still a challenge to go out and recruit good people. But that's in any business, right? I mean, find me a business where, you know, the success of the business doesn't rely on having the right people on your team out there representing your business. So it's a challenge for sure, but I think it's a challenge you're going to encounter, you know, anytime you get into business for yourself. You know, I want to talk a little bit about, you know, what you do now that you've got a really good team in place and a pretty tenured team in place. What are some of the things that you do to, you know, keep the team engaged, keep them motivated, and make sure that they're continuing to develop and improve over time? Are you doing regular meetings? Are you doing trainings? What does that kind of look like for you?
Yeah, so we have a monthly set standing conference call, which like I said, it's set monthly. Does it happen every month? No, because I'll have travel issues or ShelfGenie has a conference and I take a big team to conference, so there's no need to do that. But we have that set standing. Nina's
So
coming
is
down.
is that an in-person meeting? Sorry.
No,
The
that's a
monthly?
Zoom.
That's a Zoom meeting. Okay.
Standing Zoom. Yeah, standing
Gotcha.
Zoom meeting. We do. We have Nina coming down from the Atlanta office. She's does training, so
Yep.
she'll be visiting with my design team in 2 weeks, spending a day with them, and possibly part of the next day.
Awesome.
I like to bring a big team to conference,
Yeah.
because it's good for that personal interaction, and they're just going to, you know, learn something and feel part of a bigger team. That I think the kind of the difficult thing in this, for working for me, I think for ShelfGenie for a lot of areas, but kind of how I'm spread out, and most of my designers live an hour and a half from each other, is that we're all kind of out there in a cocoon, and they're just doing their own thing, and, you know, like they're truly independent.
Right. They're not like getting together in person on a regular basis because they're spread out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I encourage them to spend time in the field, and that, you know, I need to do a better job of that because it gets them together and gets them talking and you know, idea sharing and seeing new things that someone else has thought of that they haven't. And now I'm rambling again, which I've done with a number of your questions.
No, man, this is good stuff. This is good stuff. This is what it's all about. But no, I love hearing that you do have a structure. You know, you've got a regular, you know, monthly meeting. I think that's important. I think that's, you know, something that probably too many of our franchise owners don't do. You know, I know that's something we're actively trying to be more diligent of in our business, is just getting a more structured meeting cadence in place with our team. And I think it is important that the team is interacting with each other so that they don't feel so much like they are, you know, an independent contractor out on an island by themselves.
We have a lot. I mean, we have a ton of telephone communication.
Yeah.
You know, some people more than others, just because of how people communicate. Some people just want to be text and email, and if that works for them, and they communicate well with me, that's fine. But we have you know, a tremendous amount of communication, which is, you know, easy, right, with cell phone, email, text, and that's important. And I encourage that between people on my team, and, you know, I also have told them, you know, infighting, any of that BS is just, you know, not allowable. Designers have to get along with installers, whether you like the guy or not. That's it. You can't pick who does your installs, and you can't pick who you're going to install for. And it, you know, it tends to work pretty well. I mean, we're people. You're going to have some ego problems from time to time, or some personality differences with people on the team, but we just work through it, and and set the tone that, or the expectation, the tone that, we're a team, and that's how we are. And if one part of the team is falling down, everybody's falling down, and it's my job and everybody's job to help them, get back up. We're not going to sit there, and we give recognition, but we're not going to praise the great performer and put down the person trying to drag us down. It's a team effort.
It's so important, especially if the client experience is at the center of all of this. If you do have the infighting and the finger pointing, like even if it's kind of offline, not in front of the client, they're going to get some of that, right? I mean, it's going to come through in the experience that they're getting. And so, that's why, again, I think having the regular communication between the team, we try to have our designers go out and ride on an install occasionally and vice versa. That way they can, see a little bit of the other side of it and have a little more appreciation for the work that the installer's doing, and the same thing for the installers with the designers. And that way, when a mistake happens, because they're going to happen, mistakes happen, there's a little more empathy there, maybe, instead of just saying, well, you screwed up, you shouldn't have done that way. Yep. What are you thinking? And it does help to eliminate a lot of that. Love hearing that you make the investment to bring your team to conference. It's not a small investment, right? I mean,
No, I brought myself and 1, 2, 3, 4, 7 people last year.
Yeah.
So times, it's almost 10.
Yeah.
Grand investment. But it has historic, last year not as much, but it's always paid off just from the post-conference bump and excitement that people have from being there and being part of this larger team.
Yeah, I mean, they do. They feel like they're part of something bigger. They usually get pretty fired up. They get to interact with other designers and installers from other parts of the country, probably pick up, some ideas or tips from them. We've been taking the installers to the plant, which I think is good for them to see the manufacturing side of it a little bit. And so, we haven't been in business for nearly as long, but we've, brought our team to both of the conferences we've been able to attend, and definitely seen, the post-conference bump that you referenced. So highly encourage anyone listening to this, once you get into business, it's well worth the investment to bring your team to our annual conference every June. So really good stuff. I don't see anything else in the chat box, but I'll unmute Tommy and Kevin here and see if there's any other questions that have popped up. Anything from Michael, guys?
Hey guys, I have a question.
Go for it.
It's about vehicle wraps. So since you don't live in your area down in Florida, who is driving a wrapped vehicle down there?
I have one of my installers. I have his construction trailer wrapped.
Okay, and is that where you store the home show display?
No. That gets stored in a storage unit. The trailer is specifically, because if I wrapped a trailer that had the home show booth in it, it's just gonna sit there, and it's really not visible. So, kind of gets away from the point of having something wrapped or paying for it.
Yeah.
Unless I'm going back and forth to a home show for the most part. But no, one of my installers, he drives a pickup and he has his trailer, and that's where he has his table saw and his tools, and loads it up with his ShelfGenie product and all that good stuff, and takes it in tow.
Yep, that's a good way to do it.
Now, I've got an ambitious idea that I want to not only wrap my own car, but I want to convince one of my designers to wrap their car too. And I might offer to pay for it, and I might offer to put a unique phone number on that car, where if someone calls that number, that designer would get a self-generated sale. And I was actually just on a call with a different franchisee, Kelly, yesterday, and she kind of told me, good luck with that, convincing a designer to wrap their car. What's your opinion on that? Do you think that's a realistic goal for me?
So I'll tell you, when I bought the Orlando market one of the installers had his pickup truck wrapped that the prior franchisee paid for.
Okay.
My concern with that is, dropping $4,000 and the person doesn't work for you before the useful life of the wrap is gone.
Yeah.
The second thing I would be cautious of is my accountant and my attorney, because I floated that by them. They both said, absolutely not. And people will disagree. So this is just their opinion and mine. Do not wrap a subcontractor's car, because although they don't work for you, if there's an accident, that's where they're coming.
Oh, interesting. I hadn't thought about that.
You. I did it with Bill's trailer, so it's not like me saying I believe one thing and did another. In that instance, I didn't really have a choice, right? Because I could wrap my truck, but it's going to sit in my driveway in Tennessee, and it really defeats the purpose.
You'd be sending business. You could rent space on the side of your trailer for Charlie's phone number and maybe drive some business to him.
But I did have another installer one time offer that I could pay to get his van wrapped, and I didn't. And he was only with me for like 9 months, so there would have been $4,000 down the toilet that he would have peeled it off as soon as we were done. So I don't know, thoughts, Wes?
Oh, I think it's an interesting idea, Kevin, and I like, how you're just kind of thinking outside of the box. So I would definitely encourage you to keep thinking along those lines. The first thing that popped into my mind was just, from a liability standpoint, how does that play out if there is an accident or something? So, you definitely want to explore that. And, when it comes to 1099 contractors, the laws are different in every state. So, Kevin, in Minneapolis, you'd want to, make sure you have a good grasp on, what that would look like. My other thought on that is, there might be some sort of a middle ground that you could land on where, to comply with like the franchise agreement, you need like a full wrapped vehicle or a trailer or whatever. But if you already have that, you might be able to get some magnets with some phone numbers or something like that your designers could, throw on their car when they're going to an appointment. And then when they're out taking care of, their normal day-to-day stuff, they don't have the magnet on there. And, you're still getting some exposure for the brand. And, you could even, go down the route of putting a dedicated number on it. So maybe it's another way they can get some self-gen appointments. So, I definitely think it's an idea worth continuing to kick around. And, I like where your head's at with it.
Yeah, maybe you do and have her sign a contract that, she won't peel it off for 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, that's a good point. Anyone that knows my wife, Tress, and I will tell you that I'm the bright ideas guy and she's the realistic one out of the two of us. So it's good for me to just throw that idea out there and get a few, cautionary points on what I might have to look out for.
But again, I don't discourage you from thinking that way. And, it's good that she can kind of balance you out a little bit. But I think, just always thinking outside the box. That's how some of the best ideas come about. And honestly, some of the things that are, staples in the ShelfGenie system today were, a crazy kind of wild idea 7-8 years ago that no one had tried before. And now it's, it's a common practice. So, yeah, I like that. I would just say, before you make any sort of a substantial financial investment in something like that, make sure it's someone that you feel confident has long-term potential with your team. We've got a marketing girl that we hired, so she's not a designer and we pay her hourly. And she finds events and coordinates, things of that nature, events and festivals for us. And, we've considered, because she's actually a W-2 employee, we've considered giving her our wrapped vehicle because it would probably, get more exposure than it currently gets. So, there's definitely different ways to think about it. And I know I've been pleasantly surprised with how much attention our wrapped vehicle actually gets. We have a dedicated phone number on it. We definitely get calls from time to time to that number. And then when you're out and about, you'll see someone at a stoplight writing down your phone number. Someone will come up to you in the grocery store parking lot and ask you more about what you do. So it definitely, does work from an exposure standpoint. No doubt about it.
Okay, I want to talk a little more about marketing, if that's okay.
That's where I was going to shift gears to next anyway. So go ahead with your questions for sure.
So here in Minnesota, the home show circuit is huge, and we're planning on getting most of our appointments from live events. But I had a conversation already with Brett Chevrier, where he kind of told me that it's not really as big a deal in Florida. So would you agree with that? And if that's the case, if you're not getting most of your appointments from the live events, can you go through your primary marketing activities and kind of what you're having the most success with, whether it's Valpak or print or digital?
Yeah, we don't do a ton of live events. It's kind of interesting. I used to have one of the old corporate markets guys. Part of my Hillsborough County, Tampa, Florida market was a corporate market, and we shared it. So he used to come down and help out with the home shows, and he said he can't believe how tough it is for people to get people's information in Florida versus other places where he goes to help at these shows. So we'll run anywhere from 6 to 9 events a year, home shows. This year I have 6 on the calendar, and we seldom make a ton of money on them. They're always profitable just because they're so cheap to do. I have a 10 by 10 booth, and I don't know what space costs where you live, but where I live it costs $1,000, and until I pay everybody and all allocations are done, it's what, $2,000, $2,250, something like that show, and you don't have to sell very much to break. You don't hardly have to sell anything to break even. But as far as our lead generation, we're high print. I can just go down my list. We do every home, because I'm in several areas. We do everybody's home mag. I don't know if you have RSVP where you live. That's a high quality, heavy paperboard postcard deck that comes out.
Okay, we have that.
We have the Clipper. Do you get that? That's a national mailer. It's not as high quality as a home mag publication, but the cost is pretty good for me, so we do that. We have a local publication that looks do you have the home mag where you live?
Yes.
Yeah, we have a publication that looks just like the home mag, but it's a different publisher. We do that. We do every local newspaper, either anywhere from, next year the minimum will be 4, from anywhere from 4 to 8 times a week. We do some Valpak in certain areas where it's been effective.
You find with Valpak it works better the further out you get from the city center, because that's what I've heard from other franchisees.
Yeah, to be honest with you, I don't track it that much in that detail. I kind of do 2 things. My first thing is I don't get overly focused on, and maybe I should, but I don't get overly focused on the particular return on a specific publication. I'm more look at the overall marketing mix and what's that doing for me. And then if something's just an absolute laggard,
you can tell.
Then that has to go.
Yeah, you can tell.
I mean, if it's just really, really bad, it has to go. But I'll give you an example. In Orlando, and this is a little bit high, but I've got a $134,000 marketing budget next year. 50,000 of that's going to the Orlando Sentinel. And you say, wow, that's a lot, and it's too much, and it is, but we get tremendous exposure for that.
You said 50,000?
Yeah, and
okay.
Good, and that's too much. It should, I'd like it to be half of that much, but I get great exposure. I think it does good for branding. I know a ton of people see it. I intuitively know a ton of people see it and don't use the same phone number that they're looking at. They'll go to the internet and check us out and come that way. I mean, I just know it has to be that, and I might be wrong in my thinking, but we do a lot of newspaper, right? Our key demographic is still the people that buy the newspaper, as opposed to young people, and they like to have things in their hand. And then there's the digital component, of course, which ShelfGenie directs to an outside vendor that takes care of that for us.
We have kind of a similar situation in Minneapolis. We have the Minneapolis Star Tribune, which is the big newspaper for the Twin Cities, and that is producing one of the worst ROIs of any activity we do, but it produces the most leads. And it's like you said, it's getting the product out in front of a lot of people. So I guess what would be your advice? Would you think that we just want to continue doing that even though it doesn't specifically produce a strong ROI?
I wish I knew the right answer to that.
Okay.
I'm keeping going with it, and my hope is that the new media team is able to get me into a better program, so that cost can come down, and then I'll reallocate those monies.
Yeah, and just to give a little context, Michael, so Kevin and his wife are in the final stages. I think actually probably Kevin, by the end of the day today, everything will be signed and sealed, purchasing the Twin Cities market. So they've got access to the marketing ROI reports and so forth that are currently, what they're currently doing there. I tend to agree with Michael's philosophy in that, you really want to primarily look at your overall ROI because, the reporting's pretty good, but it's essentially what you'd call last click attribution, right? So, in the example he's using, a newspaper ad, unless someone picks up the phone and calls that number in the newspaper, a lead's not getting attributed to it. But, if you have a large paper with a very large circulation, you're getting a ton of exposure. And there's a very high likelihood in my mind that even if on the ROI report, that paper's not showing a great ROI, it's resulting in a lot of the other leads, it's contributing in a lot of the other leads that are coming from other channels, right? So someone sees the ad, then they go to the website, they do some more research. And a lot of this, it happens in tandem, right? It takes multiple touch points to drive someone to actually pick up the phone and call or to fill out a form. We talk to clients all the time where they're like, hey, we saw you at the home show last fall. I got your Val pack. I saw you in the newspaper. And then an ad popped up on Facebook and I clicked on it. And that's when I asked someone to come out. So, to Michael's point, there will be things, once you have enough data where you can look at it and say, all right, this is a clear loser. Let's cut it. But some of those things you want to be careful of. And I'll never forget when we were first starting, Andy gave me an example from his business in Raleigh where, he looked at his newspaper ROI from the previous year and it was not very strong. And so he looked at it and said, all right, well, I can probably save $30,000 or $40,000, whatever I spent in the newspaper last year by just not doing it. And once he pulled the newspaper, a month or two after that, everything fell off the table, kind of showing him that those newspaper ads were supporting a lot of the other things that he was doing and in one way or another driving a lot of the leads that he was getting. But I like what Michael said. Kevin, once you guys, come to training and start meeting with the marketing teams and stuff, get them involved. They can definitely help you try to go and negotiate better pricing. A lot of the newspapers these days are willing to, try out some sort of a pay per lead program. So they very well may be able to come in and help reduce your cost, which is only going to help from an ROI standpoint.
Okay, great. I've got one more question about marketing.
Go ahead.
This is about B2B referral sources. So since you're not down in Florida right now, is anyone on your team going to any sort of a business networking group on a regular basis? And then also, do you have any relationships with any companies like a closet company or cabinet refacing where you send business back and forth?
Yeah, sure. So I have one guy who's he's been part of BNI for years, and he's pretty diligent about going. He'll occasionally pick up a self-generated lead from that. I would, if it was me, I would quit, because the amount of time and money he spends being part of that group it's not covered by increased ShelfGenie business. So if that were the reason why he was going, I would say get out of it. But there's some other intangible reasons why he goes, and the networking is a positive experience for him. I encourage all of my designers to, have one or two closet companies that they can refer business back and forth with. That's the primary opportunity that I've seen for us to refer business, because we don't do it, and most of them don't do what we do. So, they should all do that. And I think it happens sporadically with most of the people on my team, because they don't see an immediate return, because you've got to do it over and over and over and over and over. Yeah. You probably have to be the one to get out the referrals first before you see something come your way. But I do have a company that's kind of like, they're mine, because I developed them as a good referral source when I lived in Florida. And they're a closet company, and they send us business. And if ever I have the opportunity, I send it back, and make sure they know that I gave so-and-so their name. And then I send their sales guys out a little check if we close it. It's nothing huge, but just lets them know I'm thinking about them, or send them a card to have lunch brought in for the office, because they all have storefronts.
Yeah. People are surprised. It doesn't take much. It doesn't take much to really stay top of mind with some of these referral companies. A little check or bringing in lunch, once a month or something. That can go a long way.
Yeah. And, the old ShelfGenie model, and I don't know if they're still teaching that, Wes, was, send them a check for 20%. And I'm like, that's a lot of money. And while it's nice to receive that, they don't need that much, and they're not expecting that much.
Yeah, I would say that if anything's being taught now, it's 10% as a max. But we learned the hard way, because I went in and was trying to set up a referral partnership with a closet company here in town, and I should have just shut up and listened and figured out what they were expecting for referrals. But I went in and shot my mouth off and was like, yeah, we'll give you 10% of whatever one of your referrals buys, and our average sells about $3,500. And they're like, okay, cool. We do like a $50 gift card usually. And I was like, well, damn, I could have gotten out of there with a $50 gift card.
Yeah, I've got nothing ever from any of these companies, and that's okay. I'm the boss, and I'm dealing with their sales staff, so their profitability on a job isn't what mine is. But I write their guys like 2.5%, and they don't know how much they bought.
Sure.
And they're happy to get $100 in the mail.
Yep.
They don't expect.
Yeah. And, I think, Kevin, because the referrals are obviously one of the ways that you can obviously increase revenue, but definitely improve your bottom line in the process. So it should be a focus. It is the type of thing that's going to take, persistence. It's not going to happen overnight. And so for that reason, I think to really get a good stream of referrals happening in your market, you've got to kind of lead by example. You've got to be the one kind of out there spearheading those efforts. And then once your team sees that, wow, Kevin's really been out there focusing on developing referral partnerships. He's, now getting some traction with that. then they'll kind of believe. And I mean, it's in a designer's best interest to get out there and do some networking and create more opportunities for themselves. But my gut tells me most designers are probably not going to be as proactive in that as you'd like them to be. But if they see the proof, if they see it working because you're leading by example, then they're a lot more likely, I think, to fall in line.
Yeah, I let every time I get one, and I don't close most of them, because I'm not there much. I dish them off to the design team, but I let the whole team know when I'm going to toot my horn when I get a closet company referral in that we just sold a $4,000 job, and by the way, why aren't you taking the time to go do this with a couple of companies?
Yeah, we do the same, and we have one designer on our team that she just does a much better job than all the others when it comes to self-generating. Mm-hmm. And we pump that up, every time, whether she closes it or not. Every time she runs a self-generated appointment, we make it known to the rest of the team, and it has started to have an effect on the other designers, and a little bit of that competitive nature starts to kick in where they're like, wow, Pam keeps getting all these shout outs because she's self-generating appointments. Maybe I should do a little bit more of that.
Yeah, and they're doing the math too every time you tell them that.
I was going to say, not to mention it just makes, financial sense because they're making double the commission. At least that's how we have it set up with our designers. But yeah, I mean, I think you're thinking about the right things, Kevin. I mean, and I know we've talked about all of this at length, but in a market like Twin Cities, I think the live events should be, a focal point from a marketing and advertising standpoint. That market seems to be very conducive to that. And then, like any business, referrals are gold, right? So whatever you can do to stir up referral activity is going to be a great use of your time as the franchise owner. Tommy, what about you, man? We're at the top of the hour, but I want to give you a chance to chime in here if you've got any questions.
No, really the only question I had was about marketing, and Kevin already kind of asked the question I was going to ask.
Okay. Awesome. Well, appreciate the good questions from both of you. I hope you both and anyone listening in after the fact got a lot of value out of today's call. I mean, I probably get the most benefit from doing this every single week because I learn something new, every single time I do one of these, and we're implementing a lot of, what I'm hearing on these calls in our business. So it's been pretty cool in that regard. But Michael, thanks again to you, man. Really appreciate you taking some time out of your day to come on and do this. As we wrap it up, I mean, any kind of final thoughts or any pieces of advice you'd give to, these two guys who are getting ready to jump in and start their business, or anyone else that's just still in the process of, figuring out if ShelfGenie might be a good fit?
Yeah. So, I really like this business. Yeah, I'm not the most eloquent group speaker, small group or large, particularly if I don't know the people, and I lose my train of thought, which you experienced today. But I really love it, and I'm 52. I'm going to ride this train as long as it stays on the tracks. I mean, that's it. I've thought about selling it at some point, but I could be 70 years old, and it just is. I don't want to simplify things, but it's a really flippin' simple business model. It's not complex. Other than me, a cell phone liability insurance, I've got no overhead. It's a nice model.
I would echo all of that. And look, simple doesn't always translate to easy, right? But there's not a whole lot of moving parts and pieces. And, I think Michael's a great example of, if you do put in, the time, especially up front, to lay a really solid foundation for yourself and put a good team in place, it's the type of business that can keep growing and continue to produce for you. And at the same time, create a relatively flexible lifestyle for you as the owner. The key is, like we talked about at the top of the call, getting the team in place. So Well, we'll go ahead and wrap it up, but I again appreciate everyone's time. Thanks for joining us. Michael, really good stuff, man. You don't give yourself enough credit. I know everyone that listens into this is going to get a lot of value from it. So thanks again to you. And we'll look forward to seeing everyone at this call here in a little over a month in Atlanta.
Yeah, thanks for the information, Michael, and we'll look forward to seeing you at the owners meeting too.
Yeah, good luck with everything. Take care.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, bye.
Thanks, everyone.